Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 17 of Stat Chasing. The only week that matters is week 17, and we are finally here. Got a couple exciting sweats and best ball tournaments to discuss. Both Connor and I have some bullets left in Best Ball Mania and FFPC's Best Ball tournament, and we're also going to talk some strategy for playoff best ball and rip a couple drafts on there. But Connor, let's start with you. Do you want to talk through your sweat you have going in week 17 on FFPC?
Yeah. I should say before I start. I think there's something strange with your audio.
Okay.
It's a little echoey.
Got it. I'll try to fix that. You can.
Yeah. I'll chat about my. So obviously. Delighted to get two teams into the finals. The way I'm trying to approach it mentally is, hey, once you get into the finals, it's a random DFS sweat, right? Getting there is as much as there is skill in the game. That's the part that that's the part that I guess you've gotten over the hurdle. You've given yourself a chance to win. So. Really happy with that. Like you, one of my two teams was a Derrick Henry team. So really, probably more accurate to say 1.5 teams left.
The Derrick Henry thing. I mean, I guess we should have predicted that week 17 would be meaningless for the Texans. I mean, for the Titans. That's frustrating.
That's just a run bad. And what makes the run bad even worse is that my other team has who should be the backup for Derrick Henry in Dontrell Hilliard, but he's on IR, so he doesn't even benefit.
Oh, that's frustrating. The Derrick Henry stuff, I don't know. Like, I guess he's not officially inactive yet, so I've been holding out the slightest bit of hope, but all the reporting says he's inactive.
All the newsbreakers and news hounds have said, he's not going to play. Like,
I know. I'm just lying to myself at this point and holding on to that 5% chance. But anyways, we should have set it up a little bit more. You won this tournament last year.
That's true. I just assume that I repeat it so often. I just assume that everybody knows at this point. But I won the tournament last year. The team I had last year was like kind of like a suit, probably the best team I'll ever draft in my life. I had Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Devin Singletary, Sony Michel, both like in the top 5 for running back scoring in playoffs last year.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Jamar Chase, Deebo Samuel, Justin Jefferson, Mark Andrews. And then a bunch of like other guys that were also useful. AJ Brown as well chipped in a little bit. But he
had a couple big playoff weeks, if I remember right, like week 16 or something last year.
Yeah, these teams last year's team scored above 200 points like every single week. These have been 195ers, and it kind of feels like I've been a little bit lucky to get the 195ers. A couple more injuries. The depth picks aren't as interesting. But one thing that I do think is interesting. So they're both Pat Mahomes, Kelsey stacks.
Sorry, Connor. Could you screen share your team?
Yeah.
That'd be cool just to check out what you have going. Not to get you off.
Share screen. So I've got the ownership here, to be helpful.
That's cool.
So the team on the left, that's probably the more likely team now that I do think is live. So both teams are Pat Mahomes, Kelsey stacks, and there is only obviously these are among the chalkier players. So like 14% Kelsey, which isn't too high, but it is pretty high. 17% Pat Mahomes, and I suppose I should say it does help with the lower count that that means there's only 11 other Mahomes teams, 9 other Kelsey teams, and there's only two. There's only two. Actually, that's not good. So I have it. There's only 6 Mahomes and Kelsey teams, in the finals. So just having that stack, what made that stack difficult was you needed Mahomes to get back to you late in the 6th for that ADP to work out.
Yeah.
And what it strikes me as just kind of like getting some decent values on your early picks. Even going into this final where I've got some higher ownership players in combination, they're not like there's only 3 Kelsey, Mahomes, Saquon teams, and obviously if all 3 of those guys went off, that would be really helpful for me in terms of putting up points. But then it wouldn't push up. I guess there's only 2 other teams that would have all 3 of those players.
Yeah,
that does show to me like the value of getting good ADP value early in drafts when you get into these spots is super helpful.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not all about just the individual ownerships. Another thing I think that's interesting with this team is you had both Kelsey and Kittle, and I guess going bully tight end is a little bit more common in FFPC than it would be.
Yeah. So this is a very FFPC driven thing. So I actually wrote a blueprint on how to attack this tournament in the off season, and one of the biggest points that I tried to make was people kind of going to the tight end premium format just systematically underestimate just how much tight end firepower you need. So yeah, I took Kelsey, was happy to take. I think I got George Kittle in. I got a value on George Kittle, so happy to go double elite, and then even when I have the double elite, still going to the third guy, because this is a combination that shows just how valuable those blow performances can be. Because the other point about FFPC is that it's 2 flex. So I drafted 3 tight ends and they are all in my lineup, and really gave this team a helpful push into the last week. Yeah,
that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, like an underdog, if you draft 3 tight ends, you're obviously dead to have them all in your lineup at once. Here it can work out. I also would assume that people who draft an elite tight end in the first 2 rounds, that they generally like shy away from taking another one in the 3rd and 4th. So I'd imagine that the Kittle, like when you looked at the combos, did you look at Kittle and Kelsey?
So I've got there's 2 Kelsey Kittles teams.
Yeah. Because and both those guys
home too, which is unfortunate, but
2
Kittle, Kelsey, that's massive, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because both those guys individually are what 20%, both like 20 and 15% owned or something like that.
So you've got 14% for Kelsey and 21% for Kittle, but like you said, only one other team had them in combination. Yeah. Even though Kittle has been huge in the playoffs. And Kelsey has been helpful. Kelsey's clear league winner and helpful in the playoffs as well.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I should say is it is only 63 teams in the final. So having entering tournaments where the final count is lower or the tournament size is smaller can be very helpful from that standpoint too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It looks like too, just looking at the team on the left in particular, I think like you have a lot of wide receivers here that are low owned, but still very much live to have weeks. Hardman coming back is pretty interesting. Claypool,
absolutely huge.
So maybe he can come back. But yeah, any other like low owned guys on your teams here that you're excited?
Andre's probably the big hopeful. We're 13%, so not particularly low owned, but given the upside that he's capable of, definitely interesting. Definitely happy to have DK Metcalf. They're playing the Jets this week, and hoping for a big game for the Seahawks. And maybe Tyler Lockett does play, but he's still second fiddle to Metcalf after taking a few weeks off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And last thing, so I noticed you have both Mahomes teams here, but unless I'm missing something, not a ton of Denver I guess the team on the right, you did have Edmonds and Dulcich as the Denver.
Right, yeah. Well, Edmonds was a Dolphin when I drafted this team. But I did have Dulcich. And you might like, why didn't I do the week 17 bring back? Because we've all seen the memes on Twitter where it's like, oh, well, you can have Pat Mahomes and Kelsey in the final, but if you don't have Courtland Sutton on the way back, you're dead. So I try to draft with as much correlation as I can. But the way I think about correlation as well is that you need the value still needs to be there.
Yeah.
Because like we talked about this, correlation is it's like a points boost for your team. But if you're drafting at per values to begin with, then your point boost may not even take it up to the same projection as a non-correlated option. And I guess I had a general take, not that I didn't draft Courtland Sutton or Judy at all. I didn't I really did not go out of my way to draft them just because I honestly thought, especially towards the end, both of these are later drafted teams, that those guys were too expensive. So and that's one of those things where it's like a personal choice. Like best ball is not solved by any means. But the way I play, I want correlation, but I'm not going to take horrible values or what I think are bad values just to get correlation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I won't be able to cite the exact numbers here, but I know Hayden did some research this summer on like the bring back correlations, and they are like a little bit weaker than I think the general hive mind fantasy Twitter sphere thinks. Like certainly they exist, especially like wide receiver to opposing wide receiver, or quarterback to opposing wide receiver. But the other ones like quarterback to opposing running back, or like running back to opposing tight end, or stuff like that. I saw a lot of people forcing that type of thing when sure, if it's at ADP, like I don't think that hurts you going that route. But definitely not something that like, whereas the team, like the quarterback to his own team's wide receiver, I'm willing to reach like close to around an ADP to do that, you know, especially once you get into the later rounds, because I think that's just so valuable, like the double from a single play. But some of the other
especially in these tournament things, like I'll give you an example of where I did reach for a stack. So I got just from memory, I got about a round and a half on Joe Burrow of value, but I didn't have T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. And then I was like, okay, well, if Joe Burrow is winning me the money, then somebody has to score the points from him. And those two guys are gone. So I reached about a round and a half on Tyler Boyd just because I'm like, I have to, like, this is the only way where to win equity makes sense here.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Anything else you wanted to note on your teams here? And also, is my audio?
Yeah, you're sounding good now for sure.
Cool.
I think I covered kind of the points that I wanted to. Maybe I've got I'm probably irrationally cheering on Jameson Williams, given that he's on that left team. Like, I'm just praying every week that his snap count goes up. He's getting these deep targets and he's scoring bombs, but probably not going to happen. But that's something where I'm like, I'm going to be cheering for it.
It's weird how he's still behind Reynolds and Raymond. Like I didn't expect him to get a full role at any point this year necessarily, but I did expect him at least to be hovering, in that 50 to 70% route rates range, and he's at 8 snaps a game or 8 routes a game, that type of thing. So it's kind of.
I have reflected a little bit on that, where if it feels like, well, he's a rookie that missed all of training camp and half the season, more than half the season, and so he's just starting off so behind.
Yeah,
and he has to learn all these new concepts, and even though he's clearly one of their better players, they can't play him because he hasn't practiced the playbook enough. So that's definitely going to be something that I remember for future years on that kind of ACL stuff or longer term injuries.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we have seen it break other ways historically, like that. The Odell is always the outlier example that comes to mind there, where he missed a huge stretch of time.
Right.
It wasn't ACL. It wasn't that serious though. So I think there is a difference there in that type of, surgery and long recovery. I think Odell's injury was like a hamstring pull or something.
Right. Yeah. And he did have something of a training camp. He had rookie mini day and all that sort of stuff. Whereas J-Mo did not.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me pull up my best ball team. So I was able to sneak through 2 teams into Best Ball Mania 3.
Oh, congrats, by the way. Getting 2 BBMs into the final is huge.
Yeah.
I got 2 out of 10,000. You got 2 out of 460,000. That's really, really good.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Are you able to see the? No, I got to add it to the stream. Okay. Yeah, thanks. I was really excited about it last year. So I kind of just got into best ball last year. I fired I think 70-ish bullets on Best Ball Mania. Gotten 0 through the finals, which is kind of what you'd expect.
Right. That'd be your expectation.
Yeah. So I did the math. On a 150 max this year, you would expect to get just 0.15 teams through the finals. So 1 out of every 6 or 7 people that 150 max would expect to get a team to a final. So that's just to put it in context of how low odds this game that we all play is. It's still a lottery just to even get 1 team through to the finals, even if you 150 max. So I certainly got some lucky breaks here. The team on the left only scored 145 points and made it through the finals. So you gotta take some good luck where you can get it. But anyways, on these teams here, I guess starting with the team on the left, this was a team where I actually was able to dig up my thoughts on when I drafted it, because it was a Underdog cardio club team that I drafted and tweeted about, and it was drafted I think August 18th or something in mid-August, and I was really heavy on the elite quarterback strategy this year. I had a ton of Hurts, ton of Lamar Jackson, ton of Kyler Murray, all those guys I was scooping up. Here, I got boxed out of elite quarterback, not really on purpose, but a lot of them went earlier than expected. So when that happened to me this year, I tried as best as I could to find sort of the mid or late round quarterbacks that still had upside. And Lawrence was a guy that I was all over this year, not only because he was cheap, but because the Jags pass catchers were extremely cheap. Kirk, I think maybe was a 7th or 8th round pick, but the other guys, Zay, Evan Ingram, if you wanted to get Marvin Jones, all those guys were basically free. So that's what helped this team survive. I took Lawrence, Zay Jones, Evan Ingram. Zay and Evan Ingram had huge games to close out the year that helped me advance. And also have CMC, Fournette for some upside at running back. So, this team, it doesn't really have any true league winners when you look at it. Maybe AJ Brown, you could argue, or CMC's obviously had a good year, but not completely smashing expectations. It's just kind of every one of these picks has got me some points throughout the year. Even
this is a very healthy squad.
Yeah. Mariota is going to have a massive game in week 17. I think like him and Chris Evans across both these teams. Well, I guess Derrick Henry now too. Those are the only 3 dead players across both of these teams, I'm pretty sure. So I like that. Just the fact that I have 32 out of 36 or whatever players like healthy across both my teams.
That's really helpful.
Yeah.
But one of the things from my teams was that they're carrying some injuries. So having everybody healthy is huge.
Yeah. The Derek so the team on the right, this is more of like I guess the team on the left is kind of more anchor-ish RB. And team on the right is more somewhat almost not robust RB, but I took 3 running backs in the first 5 rounds, I think. I took Henry in 1, Connor in 3, and Dobbins in 5. Kind of a weird draft. I also took 2 quarterbacks pretty early and then kind of just played the volume game at both wide receiver and tight end. I did take Lamb in the second, so I have some sort of elite talent there, but the wide receivers kind of on both these teams, to be honest, are like kind of wide receiver by committee teams. Like I have both CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown, and then just a bunch of guys who have stayed healthy and have had spike weeks. Waddle too on the team on the right has been huge, but besides that, it's just kind of a mishmash of guys who have been okay this year. So I'm hoping things break right, and maybe I can get a big Treylon Burks or Adam Thielen or Drake London game to close out the season.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing that I had a thought when you're talking about how hard it is and the size of the final. I really do think that people should be thinking about entry size a lot more. Like I think the underdog interface is great. BBM is a really fun tournament. But I guess they don't release the lower entry, higher dollar amount until later in the off season. But I think that a lot more people should be looking at those, because I see a lot of I see a lot of people upset that they didn't get to the final. So there's some tilt, and very understandable because you got a lot riding on it. It's emotional, but I do think that the sweat can be funner because, for example, my pod in for the BBTs in the semifinal, it was 12 teams and top 3 out of 12 make it. So even if you get that monster team that's scoring way more points than everyone else, and you still have a good score, you're still more likely to go through than 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
So I do think that's like a takeaway that I kind of want to bang the drum on a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think I'll always play BBM and get close to maxing it just because it's fun. Like it's kind of something everyone in the community is doing.
The interface is great.
Yeah.
The big prize is excellent.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm with you, and I feel like what I struggled with this year is that the alternative tournaments are either like higher, like really high stakes or really low stakes. Like the smaller field tournaments, I guess, are either really high stakes or like the Puppy and Pomeranians, which are like $5 and less. And like, I don't know, the best ball drafts take a lot of time. And for me to sink like an hour into a draft where I'm only spending $5 in the entry, like, I don't know. That doesn't quite do it for me, but I also
I get it for sure.
I'd also
and something on the high stakes stuff. I split a lot of entries. So even though I had a lot of winnings from last year to kind of like push back into FFPC, it still made more sense for me to co-draft. So instead of $125 hit, it's a 60, 175 or whatever. 62 whatever, 62.75, and how do I say that was a way for me to like make the entry closer to what I wanted, so I could do the amount of drafting that I wanted. And that reminds me, actually, I drafted the Bulldog actually not the Bulldog. It was the Bulldog. Where that was $500. But I did 3 of those, but split like 10 ways. And one of the ones that I did with the ETR guys, or ETR subscribers, I should say.
Yeah.
That's actually in the final.
Oh, that's cool.
It's 20 grand up top, split 10 ways, so it's not as exciting to talk about. But that to me, those are ways that people can reduce their variance, essentially.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. I wanted to bring up David's point on the Eagles, getting back to week 17 again. David has a Hurts-less Eagles stack, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert fighting in the final. I think that's really interesting to have all those Eagles. I think Smith is quite high owned, but AJ Brown is, well, I guess AJ Brown is as well at 19%. Goddard's down there at 6%. I think that's interesting. I was like so pumped to have this Jalen Hurts team sneak through because I was like, oh, he's put up a 0 in week 16. He's going to be like sub 8% owned in the final. I'm going to have like a leverage Jalen Hurts, and then flip over the cards this week and I see he's at 22% owned even with the 0 in week 16. So I guess that just shows like how insane his season was. He obviously had a massive week in the first round of the best ball playoff, so he probably was at an insane ownership to begin with, and I guess enough teams scrapped by with some other QB2.
And the quarterback scoring was really flat last week as well, right?
Yeah, it was pretty flat.
Nobody who really took the top off, and then the guys in the QB2 range were in and around. They weren't too far off.
I thought a lot of teams might have just been eliminated by just having zeros at quarterback, because at this point of the year, I think there's only like 60% of the original starters are still starting by now. Like I had 3 Philadelphia teams in the semis that were dead because I had a Philly New Orleans team with Jameis done. I had a Philly Tennessee team with Tannehill that was done. Some other one that I'm blanking on right now, but that was really frustrating where I had these like juggernaut Philly teams that were just cooked because Hurts was out and the QB2s I drafted were out too. So anyways, that's just how it goes. Tough to predict that type of thing. But definitely interesting that Hurts still carries this massive ownership, which is making me question, like, I think I almost want him to sit. It obviously depends how well Dak does tonight, but if Dak is a big game tonight, I want Hurts to sit, because if 22% of teams have him, like, it doesn't really help me that much if he has a big game. So we'll see on that one.
That reminds me, actually, my Derrick Henry team has AJ Brown, Smith, and Quez. And when I was drafting it, I was a little bit like, oh, is this like, should I be taking this Eagles stack without this like rushing quarterback? So what, like, is that smart? And I think in my takeaway has kind of been in smaller tournaments where you have a great quarterback otherwise, that it can still be pretty viable.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, cool. I want to make sure we get to some playoff best ball stuff. People are probably tired of talking about our team, so let's talk through, before we jump into the drafts, let's talk through, as we always do here, some hard data on stat chasing. So what I put together here on this chart, and again, I guess broader context, we're talking now about Underdog playoff best ball drafts. If you haven't checked them out, you definitely should. At Underdog Fantasy, you're essentially drafting best ball teams now for the real playoffs, not the fantasy playoffs. So you have to draft a team that will advance in each round from the wild card weekend, divisional round, championship weekend to Super Bowl. And you want to get enough points in each of those rounds to advance, and then get a team to the Super Bowl that has, 5+ players on it, so you can fill out a lineup and maximize your chances of scoring there. So what I did here on this chart, I wanted to look at individual teams' odds of making the playoffs and chances of making the Super Bowl. And to do that, I looked at 2 sources. 538 has a model, and I also just looked at DraftKings Sportsbook and kind of averaged the 2 of them to get to these percentages on the top here because there's some differences between 538 and what DraftKings thinks. And then I wanted to look at how many players on the underdog drafts are going in the top 20, top 40, and top 60 of ADP for each of these teams to see if we could identify, are there some undervalued teams that have a high chance of making the Super Bowl that no one is drafting? Are there teams that have a low chance of making the Super Bowl that are getting overdrafted? That type of thing. My main takeaway, I was kind of stretching for takeaways here because the underdog market is smart. All the good teams all their best players are getting drafted. The shitty teams, no one is drafting them. You kind of expect that. But a couple of the biggest things I did notice was I think there are maybe 4 or 5 undervalued teams, starting with Baltimore, who is locked to make the playoffs, still like an 8% chance of making the Super Bowl. And nobody really wants to draft these guys. I think it obviously has to do with the Lamar Jackson FUD. He's been injured for a while, was kind of struggling even before his injury. But, if you just trust the numbers, the betting markets, I think that's a decent team to stack up. And then some lower-owned teams, Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, and Green Bay, which is maybe the biggest stretch of the 3. But, Tampa Bay and Jacksonville, both around 70-75% chance to make the playoffs. Both those teams, if they make the playoffs, will be hosting their first round game for the wild card weekend. So they should be, decent odds in that game to win just by virtue of having it be a home playoff game. And again, nobody wants to draft either of these teams. You can stack up, all the Tampa Bay guys, maybe with Buffalo or KC on the other side, or you can stack up all the Jacksonville guys, maybe with, Philadelphia or SF on the other side. And I think create some decent teams there.
So Sam, if you don't mind me asking,
yeah,
you've played I haven't played these tournaments as much as you have, but curious about how you would approach a team like Baltimore, because I could see one way that I could see being super easy and clean is, hey, if I have a team, if my first team has a first round bye, I need points in that wildcard weekend. And it's probably a fair bet that someone like J.K. Dobbins is going to score a decent amount of points that will help you advance that round. Yeah. And I could see that being like a really clean way to play it. And you tell me if that's off. But if you are like, are you willing to make a bet that the Ravens make it to the Super Bowl? Because I think that's probably one of those things where it's why they're cheap. It's that kind of gut feeling of why they're cheap, where the numbers might suggest that it's probably higher probability than people are thinking. And is that how you would approach it? That hey, the numbers say it's more likely than people are saying. I'm going to do it a greater percentage than the field. It might be a low percentage of your portfolio, but greater than the field. Is that how you?
Yeah. I think that's right. I don't want to go 100% Baltimore, something like that.
Right. It's not going to be a high percentage.
No, but it's definitely higher than the field. I don't know if you can, I think Baltimore and Minnesota are a decent comp just in terms of odds of making the Super Bowl, odds of winning the Super Bowl. Minnesota, slightly better odds, but it's close, right? And Minnesota has 2 guys going in the top 20, 4 guys going in the top 40. Baltimore has 0 and 1 respectively for those categories. Mm-hmm. So I'm just looking at that and saying, and every draft, obviously it's contingent drafting where depending on who I draft in the first round, that determines whether Minnesota or Baltimore makes more sense, that type of thing. I'm not doing a full fade on Minnesota or anything like that, but just in general, I want to be pretty heavy, these teams that the field is just completely ignoring, because if Baltimore does make a Super Bowl run, which again, low likelihood, markets and 538 have it at 8-ish% chance. If they do, there's just not a lot of teams that are going, Lamar, JK, Andrews, maybe Demarcus Robinson or something like that. So if you have that team, in the final week, you're just such a massive favorite. So I think how you categorize or how you characterize it is similar to how I'm thinking about it. I want to have fun with these. I want to get exposure to all different types of teams, but I'm sort of looking at this from a macro lens, like looking at this type of chart here to sort of think about how I want exposures to different teams based on this sort of like valuing.
And so my other question would be is, how do you think about it in terms of like, say, the Ravens are not a high octane offense, fantasy football wise right now. Yeah. So let's say how are you thinking of it as like the Ravens are a team that you almost have to drag through to the Super Bowl, or is it do you think that like you can make a bet that it concentrates enough and they score enough points that your Mark Andrews, J.K. Dobbins, and like you said, the Marcus Robinson, that they will, because they would still have to compete with what 4 teams players in the second last round and more than that in the divisionals.
Yeah, I have thought about that. Again, I try to think that like, okay, if like the Baltimore feels gross right now, like it's a gross clip.
Right, yeah.
But I try to take the logic, okay, like if they do make a Super Bowl run, like they're at least 2 or 3 of those guys I think are going to hit my lineup every week. But I do think you raise a good point. Like a team like Cincinnati, I'm okay going with like 6 or maybe even 7 Cincinnati guys. Maybe 7's a lot, but I'm fine with going 5, 6 Cincinnati guys. For Baltimore, I'm probably going either JK or Gus, Lamar, Andrews, and just one other guy. Like I think you do run the risk if you try to go 5, 6 Baltimore players like you might do with some of these other teams that you could just bust out because there's not going to be enough mouths to feed. Like I think you do,
right?
Like Baltimore, I think maybe the Giants are another one. Like I think it's like if you want to play the Giants to make the Super Bowl, I don't think that's crazy. Like no one's doing that, and like I think doing it, 1 or 2 times, you're doing it more than the field is. But yeah, if you're doing the Giants, like don't go crazy. Take Jones, Barkley, pick a wide receiver, maybe pick 2 wide receivers, but like call it at that. Like you don't want to overstack.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Limiting the stock size with those teams is appropriate.
Yeah.
And then my other point was so with that, a Raven stack won somebody the Millie Maker in DFS last year, like in ETR, won the Millie Maker, and it was because their pass rate over expectation just got flipped right on its head because they were dealing with injuries, and obviously you can't predict that that's going to happen in the playoffs, but I think it is important to remember that we feel much more confidently about how these games are going to go than we should be. Like we are just getting constant reminders of the variance in football, and games can go way differently to what you can imagine. And there's not that many games in the playoffs. There's what? So it's 4 weeks, right? But then like 4 weeks of an NFL season has variance, but you're probably getting half the games it's 2 weeks of the NFL worth of games. And if I told you, hey, I know how these next 2 weeks are going to go in the regular season, you tell me to go take a hike.
Yeah,
I was about to say something else there, but
no, I totally agree. I think at least like you gotta like ADP matters to some extent, right? But like you got a contingent based draft in these, and like you said on like the variance, I'm trying to think about that with my last couple of picks where like you see like, okay, Tyler Boyd for Cincinnati is getting drafted like every time pretty much, but Hayden Hurst and Trenton Irwin are never getting drafted. Like I'm going to probably break tiebreakers to Hurst over Boyd, or to like, I don't know, Russell Gage over Julio, or, that's sort of a deeper one. But stuff like that, like you got to look at like, okay, are we really that confident that, whoever it might be, that Michael Gallup is better than T.Y. Hilton or something like that, or better than Noah Brown? Like try to mix in some of those instead of always taking the Gallups, the Thielens, those sort of guys. Like think about one guy after that could outscore them on a 1-game slate. So with that said, why don't we just jump into some drafts and we can continue to talk strategy as we go through it. I'm going to hop into a mitten here if anybody wants to draft along with us. These generally fill pretty quickly. And I will share it. One second. All right, draft is already starting in a minute. So looks like we got, let's see, we got the 1 slot here. So yeah, I've done a ton of these, Connor.
I think I'm going to defer to your guidance on this pick, but
okay, yeah, I think like you can go a ton of ways here. I think Buffalo and KC are still like, we talked about Jacksonville and Baltimore. I still want a ton of exposure to Buffalo and KC in these. I think like I've been thinking, I don't want to overthink these a ton. I have seen
my preference would be for Mahomes, to be honest, but
okay.
And just because the Bills have this higher probability of getting a first round bye.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's very close now. Bills, well, at least according to 538, Bills 46%, Chiefs 44%, but they do, might as well break the tie there. I like going Mahomes here.
Oh yeah, it's first round by 46-44. Yeah, that's honestly that's much closer than I thought.
Yeah, I think it got closer. The Bills did have an edge. I don't really know what in the 538 model changed that. I guess it was the Chiefs beating Seattle. They probably, that was probably more of a toss up. And then once the Chiefs, now the Chiefs only have to beat, let's see, Denver and Las Vegas, whereas the Bills have Cincinnati. That's a tough game, and then potentially a really motivated New England team that has.
I bet the ELO for Cincinnati has been going up quite a bit as well.
Oh yeah, I think.
I mean, not a monster amount, but enough.
So okay, let's think through this. So on the KC side, Kelsey goes. Juju and McKinnon are the next 2 guys by ADP. I think we should get. My hunch would be to go for one of them, unless like a really clean, like both CD and Pollard are available or something like that.
Okay,
like really clean. Just because I don't want to get boxed out of
KC guys.
But let's see. We might get lucky with Dallas here.
Who did B. Tucker take in the first?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. I should have the draft board open. He does go CD. Okay. So
it's Smith or Juju then, basically.
Yeah. I like going something like Juju and then Devonta. I think that let me play for a KC Philly Super Bowl.
I like that.
Okay. Yeah, the thing that's interesting, so like I've thought about this, like what if KC and Philly both get the 1 seed and both those teams make it to the Super Bowl? Like, how do you build a team that wins?
I literally had the same thought. So Eagles are 95% to get the first round bye.
Yeah. So if that happens, like obviously you want 5 players in the Super Bowl, so you got to do like, 2 Chiefs, 3 Eagles, 3 Chiefs, 2 Eagles, something like that. But I think you would like, again, we don't know if Casey's going to get the bye, so we don't necessarily have to draft like this now, but you would want to live it at just 5, right? Because you want to be able to fill out a full starting lineup in week 1, because only one out of 6 of these teams in your pod advance in week 1.
Right. Got it.
So it gets kind of tricky. Where like, I think what you would do is like take 3 Chiefs, 2 Eagles, and then like just a bunch of like maybe one other stack. Like maybe you take like Lawrence and Kirk and ETN, and then maybe just like 2 random like one-offs, and like like you basically are just trying to build a lineup that can survive.
Right. So it's basically 50-50 right now that the Chiefs get the first round bye or not. So
yeah,
should we I think it's so binary, they either get it or they don't. Should we play it as if they don't?
Yeah.
Or
the thing is we got boxed out of like a lot of the KC and Philly guys. Like we could go.
Okay.
I think we should take Goddard here.
That makes sense to me.
And then what I'm thinking is we could set up. Did Eckler already go? This is tricky. This is where like if I kind of get boxed out of like what I wanted to do, I consider just going for one of those low-owned teams like Tampa, Green Bay, Jacksonville, and just take like all their best players. I think we should take Pacheco here. And then maybe with our last 5 picks, we just go like all or like 4 Tampa players or like 4 Jacksonville players.
Yeah.
And that way we can play for either like a Jacksonville Philly Super Bowl or like a Tampa KC Super Bowl.
Well, we spend so much time talking about the Ravens.
Yeah, that team too. I think that works.
Now, like you said, we do want to limit stock size, but they should be on our radar.
I would have suggested the Chargers too, but Eckler. Oh, someone took Herbert already too.
I think he just went.
Yeah. So someone Tone G is setting up a nice Philly Chargers stack. I think that's a clean way to do it. That's the thing though, like, you know, this KC Philly stack, like it didn't totally go our way. Like McKinnon got sniped earlier than we wanted to. Sanders, you know, there's a chance he could have lasted. Mm-hmm. But I still want to take stabs like at building that. And then when you see like another team scooping up all those players, I think you just kind of have to like, sure, if we could, you know, win if KC and Philly are in the Super Bowl and like we get this combination of players, but like, I don't know. At this point, like
we're filling out a team with that Super Bowl, but I think we pivot to an NFC team here.
Yeah, I would be inclined to either probably go Green Bay or Tampa. Do you have a lean on which of those 2 teams? They're like, just for the odds, they're similar odds to make it to the Super Bowl ish, but Tampa has much higher odds of actually making the playoffs. And kind of neither team is really getting drafted, but Tampa's getting drafted more.
Okay. And I'll let you make a call on this pick because there's 10 seconds.
All right. Let's go with Tampa. We can go Godwin, and then the rest of these guys are similar. I like securing.
What about Mike Evans, and then nobody can take Brady?
Okay. Yeah, I like that. And then I don't have a strong preference between Fournette and Rashad. I think that's like a coin flip, really.
Right. And Fournette does have that injury to Liz Frank that he was complaining about.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that and I didn't quite know how to read that. Like the way he worded it.
It sounds to me as if it's like a pain and load management injury. And that's why he's like, yeah, stop giving out to me for not scoring many points. I'm playing through an injury here. But But he obviously is still getting a nice opportunity share, or solid opportunity share, I should say. But if they're at all close, I would, in ADP and stuff, I would lean towards the guy who doesn't have the injury.
Yeah. And there's even a world where we take both because we only have one running back right now. And I think in this format, like, we're betting heavy on Tampa just advancing. Like, it's not terrible just to take both guys. We've seen a lot of times historically. Like, I think even with Tampa on their Super Bowl run, like Fournette and Jones both had usable weeks. You know, I remember in San Francisco's playoff runs, you know, Tevin Coleman and Raheem Mostert alternated like massive weeks back to back. Like, I think it's okay to go double running back if there's not a better pick.
Right. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. But let's see.
Well, I mean, we also have we talk about Evans and Godwin. So we do want Brady, right?
Yeah, no, I think we do want Brady here. I think we should go Brady, and then let's see. Like, this team is desperate for running back points, so just a one-off wouldn't be terrible necessarily. But I think we should break the tiebreaker towards a Tampa running back of some kind. Because, like, if Barkley was here, I would say we should go Barkley. But, like, I don't think Dobbins, ETN necessarily project better than these Tampa guys. So,
I'd be good for White.
Okay, let's go White. I've been going with Fournette, so it makes sense just to switch up my preferences here because I think it's a toss up. So
right,
let's go White, and then we'll have one pick. So what we have here, we're still alive in a KC Philly. Like, there's a world where, you know, both KC and Philly get the bye, and Tampa goes off against Dallas in the first week and keeps us alive for that scenario.
Yeah.
Or Tampa just goes all the way and we have a Tampa KC rematch. Here's where I wonder if like could a team of 5 Tampa players advance in the first week, or like do we need to like take a one-off from another team? That's what I'm trying to think through. Like, I guess if they just completely smash, like that's possible, but it seems like if you're trying to get a team, like if we're playing for this KC Philly Super Bowl and we're trying to get a team through round 1, that we should like take one random.
What's that smaller running back? Not Miles Sanders, the other guy.
Gainwell.
Wasn't there an announcement about the third running back?
Boston Scott.
Yeah. He was either inactive or he's injured.
Barely see. I missed that. I think Gainwell is in play there. The thing I'll say is, if we take Gainwell, that means we've taken 6 KC and Philly players, which I think is okay because KC's not going to buy, but it leaves us one roster spot short if both those teams get the buy. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So what I'm thinking is, like, I think we've kind of built this team for.
What about Derrick Henry? If you're worried about round 1 points.
Yeah, but they're only a 24% chance to make the playoffs now.
Are they?
Yeah, they're low.
Because they just so are they really that big of underdogs for to beat Jacksonville? Because they only have to beat them, right?
They are 74 Jacksonville. We have 4 seconds left.
All right.
Shit. So he's looking at odds. I think that was a fine pick. I think we bet heavy on Tampa Bay. If they make a run, we've already seen the last several weeks that like Fournette and Rachaad White have had offsetting weeks. So I think that's fine. Maybe could have come to a better pick if let's see. Let's look at this team.
Titans 27%.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
So the 538 really think that the Jags are much better than the Titans.
Yeah. You want to do one more of these? I think I got time for one more. All right.
Okay.
I like Andrew in the chat says we're just missing Sammy Watkins to complete the Ravens stack. Yeah, I think Sammy Watkins is the skeleton key to playoff best ball.
Yeah, that's how Davis Maddock breaks even finally.
I did think for a second he was going to have a game last week. I think he had a big 40-yard catch early in the game, and I was thinking of Davis, advancing 10 teams to the finals based on that play, but I guess it didn't quite work out.
So Miles Sanders was eliminated with a knee injury. So wrong running back.
Well, Sanders was hurt? Okay. Yeah, I think Gainwell is an interesting pick. I've taken him a few times where I've done Hurts, AJ Brown, Gainwell, and then stacked up a bunch of AFC teams on their side because someone signed Sanders. I also think what's interesting about Gainwell is he's the passing down back, and Philly has had so many games this year where they've just been up 28-0 at halftime or whatever. And we haven't really seen game scripts where Gainwell would come into play. He's the hurry up guy, 2-minute offense guy. I wonder in the playoffs if they're pushed. I think they do trust him more than Sanders in those situations. So maybe he has a little bit of hidden upside just based on game script that we haven't really seen yet.
And he could just break one as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Is he drafted often?
Let's see his 80. I don't think so. He's 57.7, which I think means not drafted often.
Drafted. Not drafted often. Okay.
Yeah, not drafted often. All right, we got Chris in here at the 3 spot. So I gotta watch out for snipes.
CJ is gonna show us how to build a KC stack, I think.
I mean, I don't get why Hurts is falling in these. I think it's just the Hurts AJ Brown stack is kind of too sexy to pass up on. What do you think?
Okay.
I get the first round bye thing, but it's what really matters is Super Bowl odds. I don't care about my advance rate in round 1 of this tournament. And if you're able to sneak those Eagles teams through, you just have such a massive edge, starting with the second round. So
one thing that I've seen, and you tell me if this is true or not, because Hurts is that third or fourth quarterback taken, there will be lots of teams with Eagle stacks because it's more attainable.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then you do want to be thoughtful. And how do you be different than the other Eagle stacks?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think, again, not to keep going back to these Baltimore, Jacksonville type teams, but
they're the skeleton key to best.
I think we should take AJ Brown there.
Yeah, happy with that.
But yeah, that is a good point. I think generally how I try to approach these tournaments is I obviously in an ideal world you would stack up Eagles and either the Chiefs or the Bills, whatever team doesn't get the bye, and that would be the best way to build in theory. But the ADP reflects that, so it's really hard to get elite pieces on both the Eagles and one of these highly sought AFC teams. So once I sort of get boxed out of that in drafts, I've been more quickly pivoting to the Chargers or the Jags or the Ravens and just scooping up all the best players on those teams rather than saying, oh, I'm going to try to do the Philly Cincy Super Bowl with Samaje Perine and Hayden Hurst on Cincinnati. Sure, that could win. I'm not saying I would do that 0% of the time, but I think I would rather have try to get the best players on both teams because someone will have that room where all the Bengals players fall and they are able to get Philly, Cincy, all the best players together. So speaking of that, we'll see what this next pick does. But I am looking at Cincinnati here. Oh, I was going to say Cincinnati with both Mixon.
Well, why don't we take Devonta Smith?
Yeah, I think we should take Smith. I was going to say, with both Higgins and Mixon available, I was excited about maybe trying to grab both those guys and hope this guy in the 6th spot doesn't snipe us, but I don't think that's worth it anymore with Higgins gone. I like Smith here, and then I think – well, let's give this guy a chance.
I saw that Chris, he went Mahomes, but then he drafted Steph Diggs.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
So you're kind of guaranteed that one of your top 2 picks, one of your first 2 picks won't be in the Super Bowl. Guaranteed off the bat.
Yeah. I think that can work if I think I would break the tie and go with an NFC player. I think here we should go with and try to set up a Chargers team. What do you think?
Cool. Yeah, good for me.
Right. We could do Eagles.
That's how you differentiate your Eagle stocks. You go with the popular Chargers.
We could do the Chargers, and then we could tack on either the Ravens or
I like that.
Jags late.
Well, yeah, I think the Ravens and the Chargers are good combos because they definitely can't play each other in the first round.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think I'd rather. Yeah, that's a good point. I would if we can get a bunch of Ravens players, I would rather do that than Jacksonville because Jacksonville is possibly round 1, I think.
Chargers have that. So we were talking about this. The 5 seed plays the 4 seed, and if Jacksonville are in, they're the 4 seed, and the Chargers are 1 game behind the Ravens, and they have the tiebreaker. So there's a decent probability that they could be that.
So Herbert does go, and Keenan Allen went, which is a little annoying, but we could still get Mike Williams. We could tack on someone like Palmer, someone super late.
Right.
I like going Mike Williams here and then grabbing Lamar at the next pick, I think, is what I would ideally do.
Okay.
I wonder if we should take Lamar now. What's this team going to do? Oh, no, he's setting up a Minnesota stack. He's probably going to take Cousins. Let's take Mike Williams. Lamar's the pick by ADP. Let's go Lamar and then hope we can still get Mike Williams. I don't think this guy would have taken Lamar, but
what's the draft board look like for him?
Yeah, he's going with the Minnesota KC stack, so I'm guessing he takes Cousins here.
Right. Okay.
But then he's got another pick. I'm guessing this pick will be Cousins. Yeah, that's an interesting team. See, I think this is a good KC Minnesota team here. Cousins, Jefferson, Cook, and then Kelsey, Juju, Pacheco. That feels pretty live in that scenario. The Vikings are a team that's pretty easy to stack up. Jefferson's expensive, but
as things stand, the 5 and 6 seed wouldn't play each other until the title game, the AFC Championship.
Yeah.
Which is what the Ravens and the Chargers will be.
Yep.
So they won't play each other until the last possible, if they made it through.
That's a good thing to think about. I made the mistake early on of not thinking through the matchups, and one of the first mitten teams I did like a couple weeks ago was Dallas Tampa Bay. That's about the worst one you can do because that's the most likely first round matchup. The rest of them now, it's still like pretty uncertain who is playing who, but you can rule out some scenarios at least. So
yeah. Well, I definitely think that's something that takes work. And anything that takes a little bit of work is going to be an edge.
Yeah.
Because I know the underdog user base is sharp. It's really sharp, but I don't think it's checking that as much as they should be.
Okay, so we got we'll have a chance at Andrews barring a snipe here. I did see Chris commented on his strategy with the digs thing. I did want to talk about that because I think it's interesting, but let's take Andrews. What Chris said is the strategy for taking digs was for the AFC Championship. Thinks KC Buffalo is most likely to advance there. I think that's fine. Like again, I think like generally how I would have, and I'll have to go back to the draft board, but instead of taking Diggs, I would lean towards taking like a Jefferson, a CD Lamb, an AJ Brown, like someone from the opposite conference. But it's possible all those guys were gone. I think like I try not to judge teams' rosters too much after the first 3 rounds. Like I think you can take 3 different teams in your first 3 picks and like still make it work. So we'll see at the end how Chris's story is coming together. Here we have an interesting one, Connor, where like we have Dobbins available, but I do wonder if Barkley is just a
Saquon is like a nice. But I also think that we have a lot of players now that are in the that will be in the first round.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we should go. Yeah, we shouldn't be too worried about first round points. I guess I think we should go Dobbins because he's coming up pretty close on ADP too.
Because my rationale there was, so obviously Saquon was a value, but the teams that don't have the first round buys and are wild cards, they don't get home games, and so it's much harder for them to advance through. And so if we took 3 wild card teams, that would be difficult. There would be a lot of attrition there as we go through the rounds.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do think like if sometimes I'm just stacking 2 teams, like I'm totally fine going a random one-off Barkley, no other Giants, just because like I think he's going to project so well in round 1, and like running back points are hard to come by, especially if you take a running back on like the Eagles or Chiefs and Bills, and that team gets the bye. But I think the way we set this up, it made sense to go Dobbins there,
right? Especially we have Eckler too.
Yeah. So here we could go. Let's see. So Chargers guys. Palmer goes. We have Everett, DeAndre Carter. On Baltimore, we have DeMarcus, Gus Edwards, Sammy Watkins. We could also go Gainwell. That's not totally.
What about Quez?
We do have Quez and Let's also Gainwell on here. Who do you want out of these guys? It's a shit show. Garbage.
Yeah, I would say probably Gainwell.
Okay. All right, we got Gerald Everett, but I think we'll be able to get Gainwell.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. It's weird. Like, I don't really get what's going on with Gerald Everett's role for the Chargers, but it seems like it's been on the decline, but he's obviously like he's still out there enough.
Right.
He's not dead to help us. And he's never getting drafted. So back to the uniqueness point. Let's go Gainwell here. So we'll have 4 Philly guys, 3 Baltimore, and 4. Wait, how does that math work? 4, 4, and 3. No, sorry, 4, 3, and 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Certainly think this is as we talked about, a unique Philly stack. This has a decent amount of players that do not get drafted. Chargers, Everett, Gainwell, and then also not many people stacking up Baltimore. So I think this is an interesting way.
Yeah. I think we achieved the mission, so to speak.
Yeah. I want to quickly look at before we sign off here. Oh wait, that's the last draft. No, why isn't this? There we go. I want to take a look at some other teams. So Chris,
Is that your alarm?
Yeah, I got to run in a second. Chris went Case. So he went for the KC and Philly route as well. I think Mahomes, Diggs, Sanders, Goddard, McKinnon, and then a bunch of some other tertiary KC guys.
Right.
Also has the Tampa route in play. And then I took Diggs and Singletary for the AFC Championship game. I think that's good. Like if you're consolidated on 2 teams per conference, you're live for having the championship game, right? So I think that is a fine way to play.
Chris won the first tournament, so he obviously knows what he's doing.
I trust him.
But it was something that I thought was curious.
Yeah.
And it's like you can take 3 different players, and if you consolidate against around all those different teams, you're still drafting close to optimally.
Yeah, for sure. Feel Gnarly, who I think was watching along in the chat. I think it was Neil.
Yeah, that sounds right.
We talked about his team, but he has a nice Minnesota KC team going. Tacks on some Jacks guys late that I think keeps the Minnesota Jacksonville Super Bowl also in play. I like this team as well. Cool. All right, that was fun. I got to run, guys, but thanks for joining. It's fun talking through Week 17 sweats. Best of luck to everyone who's in best ball tournaments that finish next week. Yeah, it's been a fun ride, so we'll see how it goes. I got nothing to plug. Take a little break from the content, but we'll be back with more stat chasing stuff probably next week, and we'll do some stuff in the off season to be determined. But yeah, Connor, anything to talk about?
Send some prayers my way. That's the only thing that I'm going to plug.
Yeah, just some prayers. That's all we need. Send your prayers to Stat Chasing, everyone. Best of luck in Week 17. We will see you next week.